this straight. All right, hey, I'm Deane Cheatham. Today is Objection Handling Day. We're going to be talking about handling the toughest objections. And I think one of the most important skills you can develop as a real estate agent would be handling objections, because if you don't know how to handle objections, my argument is you won't put yourself in situations where objections will come up, and therefore you will never be on a listing appointment. You'll never be working with buyers, because if you suck at handling objections, then you're just not going to want to put yourself in those situations. So with that being said, we're going to move right ahead. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to have a really fancy thing here, maybe. Hold on one second, because I think I have turned that off. Let me see if I can find this thing. And there we go. Hold on here. So, one second. I'm not the world's greatest Zoom operator, but we'll have you going in a second. Here we go. Look how fancy we are now. We actually have a cool PowerPoint presentation. Save the applause for later. All right, so again, we're talking about handling the toughest objections. We need to first off think about what is an objection. You have to understand what it is before you know how to handle it. So a couple of definitions that I came up with. Number one, it could be a question left over in the mind of a buyer or a seller. It could just be some kind of general question that they have in their heads that they're going to throw out to you. All right. Second thing, it could be a test, right? I mean, they could be sort of sending you loaded questions just to see how you handle it, especially sellers. You know, they might want to see how you think on your feet when given a challenge or a tough question. So be prepared for that. Third, it could be something that maybe a friend told them. You know, they could be saying, hey, well, if you're interviewing an agent today, you know, make sure you ask them this, or you know, make sure that you quiz them on this. Or it could be something that they read. They've read in the paper, or they've read in a book, you know, like Selling Real Estate for Dummies. They've read something in there that they're going to throw out at you and see how you handle that. So that's sort of what an objection is all about. Now, I think you got to be on the lookout, because sometimes you get conditions versus objections. So we'll talk about what the difference they are. And so like an objection in most cases can be overcome. Is there an objection handler that is universal, that's going to work every single time? And the answer to that is no. So not every objection will be overcome by you, but in most cases, they could be overcome by you. Okay. Conditions in many cases, in most cases, really can't be overcome. There are certain conditions, there are certain factors in play that keep the situation from being overcome. For instance, if somebody, just to give you a ridiculous example, if somebody doesn't own a home, you know, if they're renting the home, then no matter what you say, you're not gonna list that home with them. Okay, if somebody is got 17 bankruptcies, $0 in the bank, and is wanted for many federal crimes, they're not going to get a loan. And so no matter how much of a slick, fast talking salesman you might be, it ain't going to work out. So conditions are things like environmental factors, time factors, financial factors, other things like that, that may impact things that you can't overcome, certainly in the short run. All right, hopefully you understand that. All right, so what do you do naturally when you hear one of these objections? What do we normally do? Usually the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get nervous, you know, because especially if you're a new objection handler or a new real estate agent, you're scared of these things. And when somebody gives you one of these things, you're going to get nervous. You're going to start to sweat. You're going to freak out. Yeah, the next thing we like to do is we like to get sort of in a disagreeable or a defensive kind of mode, you know, where we hear something, we don't like it, so we're going to bow up a little bit. You know, we're going to be ready to, you know, sort of fight or something here. We're going to just create a disagreement or a conflict. The third thing is, you know, I guess the fourth thing is sort of dangerous too, and that's called verbal vomit. That's what I call verbal vomit. And verbal vomit is when you just start running. You don't really know what you're saying. You just start running your mouth, Oh, you just blah, 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 blah. And it doesn't have to make any sense, but the reason you do it is because if you're just firing off stuff, then the other people isn't talking, or they're not talking and they're not giving you any more objections. And then the fourth or fifth thing is to just give up or quit. You know, people say, hey, we want you to cut your commission. And you say, okay, sure. We want you to do this, or we want this. Oh, all right, okay, whatever. So none of those are great things. I would think we could agree that none of these five, which are sort of natural defense mechanisms for objections, none of those are going to be the best. So what do we need to do? What should we be doing? Well, here's a sort of a list of what we want to be doing. And this is sort of contrarian logic here. So most people, when they hear an objection, they get a stern face, like make a stern face. You know, they give a doubtful face or whatever. We want to smile. Okay, when people smile at you, that makes you feel good. If they feel good, you feel good. So if you are smiling, that is a sort of a contrary to popular belief kind of reaction. And people are like, hey, they smile. They must understand. They must like what we're saying. Second thing, you want to agree. Okay, rather than the natural thing, which is disagree, we want to agree. Okay, you know, gosh. You know, somebody might say, we want you to cut your commission. Well, hey, I get it. It's a lot of money. I've been there too. So if you can agree, then all of a sudden you're inside the moat. Like we talked about with the personality profiling, you know how you want to be inside the moat? Well, hey, if we're smiling and agreeing, then we're sort of stepping across the barrier and we're with them. You know, we're with them as opposed to being against them. And that's a good thing, in my opinion. The next sort of goes along with these two, and that's expressing empathy. And empathy means sincere understanding. You know, I get your situation. I am with you. And when people feel like you're with them and on their side, then that makes things a lot easier, a lot better. Repeating and affirming. Okay, the best way to agree and to express empathy is to repeat and affirm. You know, gosh, we don't really like real estate agents. You know what? Me either. You know, I don't like real estate agents either. If you agree, repeat, and affirm, then people are gonna, again, think that you're with them. All right, so here's sort of a real simple objection handling strategy that will help you probably increase your ability to handle objections 10 times if you get it. Okay, so let's go through this. All right, so we already talked about the first thing you want to do. When you hear that objection, you want to agree and you want to express sincere empathy. Okay, that makes sense. The next thing, this is not always necessary, but sometimes they give you an objection and in your mind you think you understand where the root of the objection is, and yet that may not be it. For instance, somebody might say, you know, we want you to cut your commission. Well, you might assume that they are worried about the money, that they maybe they're close with their equity position in their home if it's a listing situation, that they may not have enough money to pay the commission, something like that, those kind of assumptions. But by clarifying or asking the client to clarify the objection, it makes sure that when you handle the objection, you're handling the root causes and the underlying true objection. So you might say, yes, certainly, I understand. And a commission, 6% sounds like a lot. Tell me a little bit more about that. What are your real feelings about that? And then listen, and then again, go back to number one, agree and express empathy before you move on to the next step, which is the beginning of starting to handle the objection. Many people use the word but. You know, I could say, we use Noah as an example. You know, Noah, I understand the the cost of this thing. It seems like a lot of money, but the word but negates everything that came before it. Bill's a nice guy. He's good looking. He's fast on his feet. He's a great dancer, but, well, all that stuff is sort of BS. And the truth is coming after the word but. If you use the word and adds to, okay, where but negates. So if I say Bill's a great guy, he's friendly, he's funny, and all this stuff, and then Bill's thinking, hey, here comes even more good stuff, versus that was BS, and now here's the truth. So when we've agreed, we've clarified, we understand the objection, we're getting ready to handle it, then we want to use the word "and" to connect the beginning and then the handling part of it. Hopefully you understand that. So the next is we want to handle the objection using sort of a logic-based theory, okay, or logic-based strategy. And what that means is things have to sort of make sense. Okay, we're going to talk about some different strategies, but basically, and not in every case, but in most every case, it's built on logic. We're trying to build some agreement and then make a case for the direction that you think is going to be the best for the client. You know, an example might be, just a quick example might be, if somebody wants you to cut the commission, you know, you can agree and talk about that and get clarification. And you say, and Bob, have you ever thought about the average agent out there? Okay. Have you ever thought about the average agent? How many homes do you think the average agent sells in the Richmond market? They'll say, well, gee, I don't know. Did you know it's less than 3? Wow, I didn't know that. What are they doing the rest of the year? Yeah, that's my question. I'm with you. I don't know. So Bob, if the average agent's only selling less than 3 houses a year, and we reduce your commission, therefore reducing the amount of money they're going to make when they possibly sell your house, how excited are they going to be about showing your house? Well, I guess they're not going to be that excited. Exactly right. Do you want to try to motivate people to show your house, Bob? Or do you want to try to disincentivize people to show your house? Well, gee, we want to motivate them. That's right. That's why we need to go with the full commission. Let's do the right thing and sign this contract at 6% tonight and get your house on the market and get it sold so you can move to Florida. Won't that be great? Okay, so that's sort of the whole idea of the logic-based approach. Now you can see, one thing I didn't write in here that you need to write in your notes is ask questions. Ask questions. That eliminates the verbal vomit sort of strategy of handling objections. Ask questions. You want to ask questions that are going to lead the seller or the buyer to the desired result. And on a side note, we're not trying to trick anybody here. We're not trying to swindle anybody. We're trying to help people. You know, you need to believe that you are great at what you do. This stuff is, you know, may sort of seem like the you know, some kind of hypnosis or some kind of thing. It's not. This is just to help people go down the path that you think is right because you think it's the best for them. Okay. Now, one thing that I did at the very end in that little role play was to close. That is the number one thing that most agents, especially new agents, or what we might call young Jedis, that they forget. If you don't close, what happens? What happens if you skip the last step? The problem is then they're going to bomb you with more objections. Okay? They're going to bomb you with more objections. So one little trick, if you want to write a side note here, one little trick is when you begin the objection handling strategy, you might say, so Bob, obviously commission, it's a big deal. Every time we come in here, it's a big deal. If we can get through that, is there anything else standing in the way of us working together? So what I have done is I have isolated that one objection that has come up, and I've tried to say, hey, once we do this, then no more. Okay? Once we do this, then no more. And that's what we're doing when we close. So, you know, again, I said something like, so let's do the right thing. Let's list for 6% tonight. Let's motivate all the agents to get out there and bring their buyers to your house so that we can sell it quickly and get you to Florida. Won't that be great? Okay, I close. If they say yes, then boom, we're going to get on with it. Hope you understand that. We'll have time for questions here in a minute. Okay, so knowing that sort of simple process and knowing that there are objections out there and they're going to come up, I think we'd all agree to that. Knowing that they're real, okay, what would you do? And I equate this, I've used this example many times. If you were a football coach and getting ready to play, and before the game you're walking through the stadium and you you find like a playbook. Huh, interesting. and you see all of the opponent's plays that they're going to run against you, what would you do? Well, obviously, you would prepare your defense for those plays, or if you saw their defensive strategies, you'd prepare your offense to beat the defense, okay? Well, here's the good news. We pretty much know what the objections are. There's going to be about this list of 10 that I'm going to give you, and then we'll give you a chance to maybe add to it. But these are really the objections that just come up over and over and over again. So my suggestion to you would be to write down the objections that you think you're going to hear. Write down the ones that maybe you've heard that you didn't understand how to handle, or you couldn't handle them very well, and learn how to handle them. Write down a couple different objection handlers for each one, and then memorize those so that when they come up, you're ready to go, okay, that you can handle them easy. I think, again, one of the biggest problems is people never do this, and so they just keep getting caught off guard over and over and over again by objections, and it affects the outcome. Usually it means they don't list houses or they don't sell houses, as many as they would want. So let's look at some of these objections that come up, okay? And these aren't in any particular order, but we want you to cut your commission. Do you think that ever comes up? Yes, it does. We've never heard of you, or we've never heard of your company. That's another one. Now, when I started back in 1995, nobody had ever heard of Hometown Realty. The good news is all of the pioneers of the company have gone out there and worked their ass off to get our signs, the old garnet and white sign, out all over town, so you don't have to worry about that one as much. But there may be somebody, and they might say, hey, we never heard of you, never heard of your company, or, you know, we don't see your company active in our neighborhood as much, something like that. They're all cousins. So it's like there are really no new real estate objections. They're all sort of related, even though they could be a little bit different. All right, let's list high and come down later. We can always, you know, we can always come down. It's hard to go up. That's a common objection. Oh, the other agent was here. You know, they said they could get us more money. Well, of course they did. We want to go with a discount company or a discount realtor. Oh, you're too new to the business. Old Noah over there, he's brand new in the business. We wouldn't want to list with him. He's too new. We have a friend in the business. We're going to go with Bob. He was my dad's uncle's army buddy. Oh, that's a great qualification. We want to think it over. That's the classic objection in all of sales. We want to think it over. Okay. That's like, you know, my wife always, every time she goes shopping, she walks into a store and people are like, can we help you? And she's like, oh no, we're just looking. I can tell you, I see the credit card bills. I know she's not just looking. We want to find something before we list our house. You know, so we need to know where we're going before we sell. I think that's 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, we have one more here. We haven't seen enough houses. So you're out there showing houses. The buyer says, man, we haven't seen enough houses before, you know, we can't buy one now. We've only seen 23. Okay. So there are 10. So if you are on this thing and if you're muted, unmute if you have any. Is there another one that we need to add to the list? And I'm happy to add to it. Those are just ones that came up pretty quick when I was doing this. No, any of those? Anybody who's not on the screen here?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is like we have a friend in the business, or hey, like we're going with this person already, even if they're not selling soon or whatnot. Because I feel like in my mind it's very easy to just kind of like, oh, you've got a real estate agent, cool, I'm gonna mark you off the list. Yeah,
so they might say, oh yeah, well no, we know Bill Smigelski, and we were sort of thinking we just might go with him. Something
like that, yeah. Or even just like, yeah, one of my best friends is a real estate agent, so.
Gotcha.
And maybe at that point, maybe they're, you know, if their best friend's a real estate agent, maybe mark them off the list. But yeah, well, just handling.
Maybe so. Well, and again, not every objection. That's almost like a condition. You know, if it's your best friend, like if somebody pulled you out of a flaming vehicle and you swore an allegiance to them or something, that's almost like a condition, right? Mm-hmm. You know, but just because you know somebody, we always thought we'd go with Bill. I mean, hey, if they want to go with Bill, that's right. But we can handle that objection, or we can make an attempt to handle that objection, and we'll do some of those here in just a minute. Somebody else that's not on the video was chiming in.
Yeah, Dean. So I have a couple I'm looking to, they're looking to list and buy, and they use the we want to find something before we list our house.
Sure.
So, and I couldn't think of how to handle that at the time.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, well, let's start a search and go from there.
Okay, well, that's a great one, and we'll spend a little bit of time right now just working on that particular one, because in a market like this, when the inventory is low, that's when this comes up a lot, right? If there were 16,000 houses on the market, do you think they'd be worried about it?
No.
Probably not. Still, some people are, but not normally. This one comes up more when the inventory is low, and it's funny because the list changes based on the market conditions to a certain degree. Okay, so based on the strategy of how we handle these objections, let's see if maybe I can go back to that here. All right. All right, you see those? So does it say on your screen, does it say simple objection handling strategy? Oh, you're not
Yep.
looking at a screen. Are you looking at a screen or are you on your phone?
It does though. It says
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
All right, so again, the objection is we want to find something first. We need to know where we're going before we sell. So what would you do? What would be what was the first thing you would say based on this strategy? This shouldn't be that hard.
I guess I would say I can understand your hesitation, being that, there's not a lot of listings on the market right now.
What was the original objection?
The objection is we want to find a house. We need to know where we're going. We need to know what we're doing. We need to find a house before we put ours on the market. Okay. So the first thing, if you're agreeing and expressing empathy, what's the easiest way I said to agree, to express agreement? Repeating and affirming.
Yeah, I was going to say repeat it.
Okay. So you say, gosh, I certainly understand. You need to know what you're going to do before you do it. You just don't want to jump out blind, right? Okay, everybody understand that?
Yeah.
So now what have I done by doing that? I'm with them. I'm empathetic. I understand. I wouldn't say, and the opposite of that is, you know what, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. You know what, how am I supposed to pay my car payment if you stick around and you're so freaking cautious? That's ridiculous. How does that sound for objection handling?
Terrible.
Not too good, right? Okay, of course. The last thing we'd want to do would be, to put you out, right? We need to sit down and figure that out. Do you understand that? Oh, sure. And I can tell you this, in today's world, don't you think this is a very common concern? And that's another thing you can use to help people feel comfortable about their objection, is letting them know that everybody feels the same way. Okay. Right? If you're alone in your worry, then you're a little bit more, you're more likely to freak out than if you know that everybody else is in the same boat, right? Does that make sense?
Right.
So then you'd say, we understand 99% of the people that we work with, that we sell homes to and list their home and sell them, they feel the same way. So you're definitely not alone. And versus but. We wouldn't say but, we'd say and. There are a lot of ways that we work through this. Can I explain that? Sure. And again, you want to try to ask as many questions as possible because you want to engage them. You want to lead them to the desired result. So what is your name, the lady who was asking that question? Who is that? I'm sorry, I didn't recognize your voice. Who is the one that was at?
Caitlin's the one that has the objection. It's me, Caitlin.
Okay, so Caitlin, we'll just role play a little bit here together.
Okay.
So Caitlin, if we could get your home on the market and find a buyer for your house who would allow you 2 weeks, a month, maybe even longer to shop and find a house, would that make you feel better?
Absolutely.
Okay, that would be, so there you go. So if that works, then great. But if you said no to that,
right.
Well, Caitlin, Caitlin, what if we could find a buyer who would actually purchase your home and let you and close on it and then let you rent back from them while we continue to look for a house? Would that make you feel good? And if they say no to that, then you got to try to maybe come up with another idea. Let me see if I can think of it. You know, I mean, at some point it ain't gonna work. I mean, you know, so here's the other thing you could set it up with this. So Caitlin, obviously, I mean, you're a pretty smart person, you know, or I wouldn't say pretty, I guess.
You're smart.
Yeah, Caitlin, you're an intelligent person, right? So what I know that I don't need to tell you is going out and writing contingency offers on houses in this market. Is that a good strategy?
No.
Why?
Because people want to make sure that they're going to get that they're going to get their house sold. And if they have an offer, they want to take something immediately, especially with all the employment stuff going on. They don't want to risk it. Exactly right.
And you know what else is a problem with that is if even if we found somebody that would accept a contingent offer on a nice home like you're going to want, how long until somebody who can buy it without a contingency comes along and takes it away from you?
Right.
That's not good, is it?
No.
So then you would present those other cases. So Caitlin, what if we found a buyer for your house that would let you, we could put a contingency in the contract allowing you a matter of time, a couple of weeks to go out and find the perfect house for you? Would that make you feel more comfortable?
Absolutely.
Great. Then let's do the right thing and then you go ahead and close and then move forward. So that is a strategy. That's sort of using this strategy to handle that objection, which I think we all agree is a real objection. All right. Let's move forward here a little bit. Any other objections that you guys have heard that we need to add to the?
I got to check with my husband or wife first if both of them are home.
Okay, that's a really good one, because that's sort of like we want to think it over.
Right.
One of the ways you can avoid objections is by sort of when you call to confirm the appointment or pre-qualifying, you want to make sure that when you're doing any kind of presentation, whether it be showing houses or whether it's listing houses, that all the decision makers are present. So when if you go on a listing appointment and only the husband's there, or only the wife's there, you're sort of setting yourself up for this one.
Right.
Right. So that's almost a condition, because if Sally and Bob are married and you're only talking to Sally, well, I mean, Sally can't sell the house by herself. She owns it with Bob in most cases. So One of the things I always ask is, are all the decision makers going to be present when I come over? Or who else, when we're out looking at houses tonight, who else needs to be involved in the decision-making process? Well, my aunt, my, Swami, my banker, well, then let's bring them on. We'll rent a van and we'll bring them all to the showing, right? So any other objections that you see out there in the world?
Well, what is your main tip for we want to think it over? Unless I just totally missed that, but like if you get kind of the end of it and they're really happy and they're like, yeah, this sounds great, we're going to think it over and get back to you. How do you get to that close at that point?
You remember the techniques. For some reason I can't make it go back to those techniques. Remember the technique called clarify? Yeah. Because we want to think it over. Well, then I don't know what they're thinking about, right? Mm-hmm. So you would ask that question. So tell me, what is it? What is on your mind right now? And then that usually leads to the real objection. Or if there really is one. Some people just use that as a defense technique. We want to think it over means we're just scared to make a decision, so we want to think it over. So tell me, really, what's on your mind? Well, we're a little worried about the commission, or I just feel like you told me you've only been in the business for a year. I'm a little bit worried about that. Something so you're going to try to flush it out.
If they want to interview multiple real estate agents.
Exactly right. That's another technique. That's one that probably should go on the list too. Is we want to interview other agents.
Yeah, so, a few times.
Yeah, you're going to hear that one a few times. So sometimes back to we want to think it over. I remember, so sometimes you can use humor if you have a sense of humor. Humor sometimes lightens things. You don't want to insult people, but you could use humor. And I thought I did this effectively one time. People laughed and we were able to work through it. But they're like, well, I think we want to sleep on it. And I said, well, that's great. Where do you want me to sleep? Ha ha ha. Right? But that sort of lightened it up a little bit. And then I was like, no, I certainly understand. Tell me what are some of the things you're thinking about? So using a little bit of humor appropriately could assist. Okay, we'll do some other objection handling. I'm going to give you some other, like these Jedi mind techniques that I've been exposed to over time. So this one I call the stick and move. Okay, and this one sort of contradicts the traditional technique. This one works very well sometimes with the commission objection, because I think, and a lot of agents would tell you, people don't really like, most people don't really like challenging you on the commission. That's uncomfortable for a lot of people. Okay, so what you could say, if somebody says, you know what, Bob, could you cut the commission? You just, no. Any other questions? That's like a real quick answer with a smile on your face, but with sincerity and with confidence, no. And you could even say, no, our company policy is 6%. Any other questions? That's a way to avoid the verbal vomit, avoid a long-winded discussion, possibly. And if they really didn't want to ask that question, but somebody they read about it, or somebody told them they needed to ask that question, that sometimes enables you to move on. But if not, they'll ask another question, but that's not a bad way to start with it. I tell this story often too. There's an agent, I went on an appointment with another agent one time, and she was talking to one of her girlfriends, and she's sort of a good old girl anyway, and she's like, well, could you go ahead and maybe cut me a little break on the commission? And this agent was like, oh, come get on out of here with that, Sally. What else we talk about? We can't do that. And it worked. Like, if I tried that, I don't think that works for me, but in her situation, it works for her. The point is, there's certain things depending upon your relationship with the person you're talking to, depending on their personality type and your personality type, that you might be able to use along with this stick and move method to use that as an effective technique. So the bottom line with the stick and move is really, it's sort of a quick, non-threatening answer that is given with a smile, but with confidence and authority, and then you try to move on. Everybody sort of understand that? All right, here's another great objection handling technique called "Has there ever been a time?" All right, so this one, what you're trying to do here is you're going to try to remind the client of a time in their life when they thought they were going and doing something right, and it turned out to be a disaster, and then you want to equate this situation with that one. Does that sort of make sense to you? And I'm going to explain it, but that's so I'll use the example. Let me use one that we may have all done or heard about somebody has done. So let's say somebody, let's say they want to try to sell the home themselves. Like, we're going to try to go for sale by owner, and using the technique. Oh, I can understand that. Tell me what's about that. Well, usually they want to save money. Is usually why they do it. So, we want to save the money, and we think we could do it ourselves. Hey, I certainly understand that. And has there ever been a time? Remember, I use the word and has there ever been a time in your life where you thought, you were doing something where you were going to save a bunch of money, and you did something yourself, and it turned out to maybe not be as good as you thought, and then you shut up, zip it, and listen. And so somebody tell me, what is a time in your life when you thought you were saving a bunch of money by doing something yourself, and it didn't turn out so well? Somebody tell me something. It'll make it a lot easier if somebody tells me something.
I know, just like with things like around the house or home projects, it's kind of like, oh, well, I could spend $100 to get it done by somebody, or I could spend, $30 to do it myself, and maybe it gets done pretty well, but is it going to last for 2 years, or is it going to last for 5 or 6 years, something like that?
That's right. And somewhere, most people have that story. They've done something, they've worked on their car, and it turned out to be a disaster. They went to Walmart, and they could have paid $20 to buy the gas grill or have them assemble the gas grill, and they brought it home in a box and took 6 years to put it together. They finally had to take it to the dump. Or, you know, you don't get your kid's bike assembled, you're going to give it to them for Christmas, and on Christmas Eve, after 40 eggnogs, you're turning wrenches and trying to put wheels on a bike. It's just not a good situation, right? Everybody's been there.
Or selling your car yourself and not selling it for the right value.
Oh, that's right. So yeah, or how about this? How many people, when you were selling that car, how many people called you and said they were coming over and didn't show?
Yeah.
What about, you know, what about having to take off time from work? I mean, tell me about that. And you get them to say, oh my God, you know, I bet I had 40 people tell me they were going to be there and they didn't show up. And I had to take all sorts of time off of work. I missed a bunch of meetings. It sucked. And then you want to say, God, I can't imagine that. I mean, but can you realize this is exactly like that? You want to try to bring it together to where you can get them, draw out all the negative feelings that they had in whatever situation that they were talking about. And then can you see how this is exactly like that? You know, you're going to have to take care of all of the showings. You're going to have to take care of all of the paperwork. You're going to have to do all the marketing. You know, sometimes it's just the right thing to do is go to the person who does that professionally, who knows how to get the job done, you know, and then see how that goes. And then obviously move towards a close. So that, again, there's not a single one that works every time, but that's not a bad one to use on some objections. The next one, for those of you that are newer to the business, is called the level shift. And this is, I think probably the best time to use the level shift is when you're talking about if somebody is worried about you being relatively new in the business. Okay. So typically, why would somebody be worried about somebody who's new to the business? What is inexperience? What is bad about that to most potential clients?
You don't know as many people in the community doing what you do.
Okay. Yeah. You don't know as many people. What else?
Or don't have the access to things that people might have that have been in the industry longer.
Maybe. You don't have the experience.
The experience, yeah.
Right.
You're going to make a mistake. You might make a mistake.
Could make a mistake, right? Okay. So those are all things that really you don't have a lot of great defense for those things if they're thinking that. So what we need to do is somehow we've got to change the equality between new and inexperienced, and then sort of switch it, because if new equals inexperienced and that's bad, and old or been in the business equals experience and that's good, somehow we've got to try to shift that. We've got to move from making new being good and experienced being bad. And I'm going to show you how you do that. So you might want to, when somebody says, we'll just use Noah because I can see his picture. So Noah, obviously and go ahead and take off your microphone because we'll role play. So Noah, excuse me, I'll be Noah, you be the seller. And so what I want you to tell me is, we're a little concerned that you're newer to the business.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest opportunities with money that we have in our life. And so, you've only been in the industry for a month. Why can we trust you with our load of money that we're giving you, basically?
Sure, and I can certainly understand that. You want this, I mean, it's a big deal, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, and the whole thought of selling your home can be a little bit scary, and you want to get the right person for the job.
Absolutely.
So can I ask you this question? Are you looking for an active agent, or are you looking for a passive agent?
Somebody very, very active.
Obviously, you want somebody who's active, right? So if you were looking for somebody who's active, what are some things that active agents do?
Actively going out and finding people to buy our house.
Right. They're going to spend the time to go out and hunt people down that want to buy your house. Are they going to be communicating with you frequently? Is that something that you want?
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to be using the latest techniques, or you want them to use some old antiquated crap?
Yeah, newer techniques for sure.
Yeah, you want the latest and greatest. Like if you were going to have a brain surgery, would you want somebody to do it with like the typical scalpel, like the old school way, or would you want somebody to come in with the modern lasers and all the computers and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so to break the role play, can you see where I'm going with this?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm starting to equate like new with active, because we're going to talk about having, I would use examples of having time to do things. And I'm equating new with modern technology, which is popular. Okay. And I'm equating experience. What have I done with experience?
Yeah, you've kind of outdated it a little bit.
It's out of date.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cheatham, I mean, God, the guy's old as the hills. I don't even have enough energy to get up out of bed. You know, yeah, I guess you could do it his way. What's he going to do? Like take the pictures and then go to Photomat and get them developed? Y'all probably don't even know what that is. Okay, but that's we're not ever going to talk trash about the person. Okay, understand that. We're not going to. That's unprofessional. That's unethical. We don't do that. But we can equate experience with maybe not being as good as you thought, and inexperience. We're going to take that out of their minds and then talk about modern, new, active, aggressive, involved. You know, how about this line? You know, Cheatham, I mean, you never use the name, but I'm just using me as being old. All right. So, you know, that experience agent, how many listings do you think they have? You know, probably like 10, 20 listings, right? So how important is it to that experience agent that your house sells? Noah, how important is it?
Yeah, it's super important if I was the only agent working
you.
at that one house. Yeah.
But answer my question. So that experience agent that has the 20, 30, 40 listings,
Yeah, it's not as
don't
important.
you think it's sort of like a numbers game to them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, I mean, if 4 or 5 of those pop every month, then pretty good deal, right? I mean, that right?
Yeah.
But what about the people that don't pop?
Yeah. We're also dealing with the houses that cost the most money, so that way they can make the biggest check at that point too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a numbers game, okay? Again, for somebody like me, do you think it's a numbers game? I'm trying to get this thing going. You know, I'm using the latest techniques. I'm in the most aggressive company. I'm doing the latest and greatest training in order to serve you and to make this thing, to build a great foundation to my business. Is that what you're looking for? And you want to look them in the eye, and that's how you close this. You know, you talk about all the cool stuff. And is that what you're looking for, or are you just looking for somebody who's playing the numbers game?
Yeah.
Okay. So hopefully you understand. Can you see the level shift? We've shifted it from new being bad and old being good to new being good and old being bad. That's like the ultimate Jedi mind trick if you've seen Star Wars. All right. Does everybody get that? All right, so let me get off of the screen sharing here. So anybody have a particular objection that we want to talk about? Any of the other ones? Okay, if you do and you want to talk about it offline, you can call me. My number is 244-1022. And if I'm free, I will be glad to talk to you about that. So here's how you become better at objection handling. You practice, okay? You practice. This Zoom format, or you could do FaceTime, is a great way to practice because, you know, I don't have to drive all the way to Halifax County and sit down with Peter Sutphin to do it. I can do it from my living room, okay? It is good to do it over the phone because sometimes you get objections over the phone. However, if you get objections over the phone before an appointment, do you think you should handle them over the phone or handle them in person?
In person.
In person is better. So, Caitlin, if you get that objection and you're going on a listing appointment, you say, Caitlin, thank you for bringing that up. And that is going to be one of the first things we talk about when we sit down and talk. Okay. Why do you do that? Because it gives you chance to prepare. So if they say, well, you know what, Caitlin, when you bring your butt over to my house, first thing we're going to talk about is your commission, because that's a ripoff and I ain't paying it. Well, then you might want to call Noah and say, hey, Noah, I got a tough one. Let's role play like an hour on cutting the commission objection. Okay. In practice. So that's what you need to do. All right. So again, I would suggest write down the objections that you fear the most, or that you receive the most, or that you think you're going to receive the most, and just come up with some points that you could bring up. And then remember that strategy. Remember, you're going to be agreeing and affirming. You're going to be clarifying. You're going to use the word "and" to connect it. And then you're going to respond to the objection, handle the objection using logic and asking a lot of questions, and then you're going to close. That's the basic strategy. And you're going to remember the stick and move. You're going to remember the has there ever been a time, and you're going to remember the level shift as some bonus material for you to be able to handle it. And if you can do that, then the whole point is, then you're going to be powerful. You're going to have your Jedi sword. And when you really are able to handle objections, they don't come up that often. And that's weird, but they don't. You know, when you're scared to death, that's when you hear objections all the time. But once you're good at it, they don't really come up that often. So that's what I know. Anybody have any questions?
That's awesome. That's a lot of good information. Thanks.
Awesome. All right. So what we're going to do is wrap this bad boy up. We're going to end the recording.
All right. Well, I got another one. So say
All right,
that
let's hear it.
you've done like low price properties, and then you're moving up to higher price properties, and like, well, you haven't, sold any homes in our price range, so why should we trust you with our high price house?
Yeah, that's a good one. And really one of the things that is more in your mind. I'm not saying that it never comes up, Caitlin, but it's most agents that fear that, it comes up, and this is going to sound weird. It comes up because you fear it. Okay.
Okay.
Somehow they sense that you're worried about it, and so you need to number one, maybe have a few objection handlers prepared, and number two, you got to get that out of your head. Okay. Because honestly, is there any difference really to selling a $75,000 home versus a $750,000 home?
No.
What are the differences?
Nothing really.
Right.
Yeah,
So
other than
that
the preference
could be
based on the buyer.
That may not be the best objection handler, but in your head, you need to understand that there really isn't any difference.
Right.
So if somebody were to say to you, well, gee, Caitlin, I see you've sold some starter homes and some smaller homes, but this is a little bit different animal here. What would you say?
I'd say, well, really, the same technique is needed for all of them. The same amount of attention and dedication is needed to get all homes sold.
Yeah. So, one of the things you would say is that, you could say, so obviously there are a few differences, but there are a tremendous amount of similarities. Mr. and Miss Seller, let's just boil it down. What is the agent that you hire? What are you looking for them to do?
Get it sold quick for top dollar.
Get it sold quick. And how does an active agent like me, how do you think that I do that?
Well, market the property.
You got to market the property. Now, so a property that's $750,000 versus one that's $250,000, there's a different target, but obviously I think I know where the target is, right? So it's a little bit different target, but it's the same kind of marketing. What else does an active agent do?
Call people to find a buyer.
Call people. They keep in touch with you. They're using social media. They're using all the modern techniques that, to be honest with you, maybe a newer to the business agent knows that some of the older agents don't know how to use. Is that what you want?
Absolutely.
Yes. See how smiling and nodding? Yeah.
Yeah.
Smiling and nodding. So you see what I'm doing? See how powerful asking questions is versus telling people something?
Yeah.
When I ask the questions, you're the one who's making up your mind. You're the one who's directing things. You're the one who is convincing yourself that I'm the one to go with, versus if me just telling you and using verbal vomit.
Right.
Does that help you?
Yep, absolutely.
That is a tough one. So that's a good one to practice.
Okay.
Anybody else? Awesome.